man. Maybe we should move on. We should move
Yeah.
on a little bit
Yeah.
to Mission Impossible 2, which takes us up about 4 years. The space between these movies is kind of fascinating a little bit. So 4 years later, we get
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 2, and which, David, that was your mission, which you already accepted. Sorry.
I did. I don't know why I accepted it, but I'm glad to. I'm glad to to do my part, if you will. But before we do that, I want to ask Bridget, would you be willing to give us the mission summary on Mission Impossible 2?
Sure. Doves.
Yeah.
Just lots of doves.
Yep.
Yes.
Slow motion. Yep.
So many slow motion doves. Yes. Yeah.
There's only 14 minutes of footage in this movie. Yeah.
So seriously, in this one, Ethan Hunt recruits a thief named Naya Nordoff Hall, along with Luther from MI1 and a pilot named Billy Baird to stop rogue IMF agent Sean Ambrose, played by Dougray Scott, from releasing a virus called Chimera. Naya infiltrates Ambrose's Sydney base, but her romance with Hunt complicates the mission. After high-octane chases, including a motorcycle duel, Naya is infected with the virus, but Hunt manages to outsmart Ambrose, injecting Naya with the antidote and securing the virus. Ambrose is killed in a beachside shootout, unable to unleash the pandemic. The team's victory ensures global safety, though Naya's future with Hunt remains uncertain. The film leans heavily on action and style, with John Woo's direction amplifying the stakes.
That's a very generous wording for that, I will say. There's been a lot of talk already about Mission Impossible 2, but I will say, without a doubt, it is 100% a movie. It is a beautiful mess of a film that I loved when I was 10. I was 10 when it came out, 11. I watched it over and over again. The music videos for it, it holds a special place in my heart, in part because when I rewatched it later as an adult, I was like, what is this? It has spectacle. It's got motorcycles. It's got long flowing hair, flames, so many doves. It even has a lot of memorable moments. Like, I forgot that the knife to the eye thing until it happened upon this viewing. I was like, oh, that's this one. You know, the knife right in front of his eye. There's a lot of really beautiful moments in this movie. It could have been a really great one. The rock climbing scene, just incredible. This could have been a good movie. But it was, I think, numbered appropriately. We'll just put it that way. Number 2, if you will. But what do y'all think? Too harsh? Too much? Too harsh?
Well, this is where I thought the franchise was going way off the rails because watching a bunch of reruns of Mission Impossible with my dad, it was always about spycraft and almost like conning the villains, getting the villains to turn on themselves or take themselves out. It was a very cerebral show.
Yeah.
And so to have this, it was like, oh, this is where we're going. Now, at the same time, though, I had already seen, this is about my 10th John Woo film. So I love John Woo, Hard Boiled, and a lot of other, A Better Tomorrow, a lot of great, amazing Chinese cinema. But by the time when you've watched all of his films and get to Mission Impossible 2, all the action scenes are just retreads of stuff he did in his previous films. So for me, it was just like, wait, they just figure Americans haven't seen these action sequences, so they're just retreads of stuff in his...
Which we had 10 or 11-year-old me wore that VHS up.
So on
and there's a difference
fronts,
between
like,
a nod and an homage and like just stringing these together.
or copying yourself from previous movies. So I was just like, what? Yeah, so it failed as a Woo film for me because I watched it, and it failed as a Mission Impossible movie, but that was all because of my prior loves of those same things. So looking back, watching it this time, accepting it for what it is, I could even go freshish and not stale. So again, if we're just talking about general schlock action movie on a Saturday night bored, I mean, that's not bad. Netflix has a ton of those. So
not boring. Anything but boring. Right. Exactly.
Right.
I don't know. Bridget, Miles, any other popcorn thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's the defense I would make of this film. I think this film falls apart because of the movies that come after it in the rest of the series. So the way that I would look at it is actually, I'm grateful that part 2 happened because I don't know that the rest of the series would have gotten as good as it did if it didn't have the kind of the train wreck that was part 2. But at the same time, like I said before, if part 2 were just a standalone film, if it were just an action movie, it's actually not terrible. It's only because it's supposed to be a Mission Impossible movie. And I think it feels more like it feels like John Woo took Ethan Hunt and tried to turn him into James Bond. Or maybe that's the script. It might be a little bit of both. So that's where, for me, we tried to combine two different characters, and I don't want Ethan Hunt to be James Bond. In the contest between Ethan Hunt and James Bond, Ethan Hunt wins for me all the time, every time. So like, for me, that is where this movie falls apart. But without that comparison, it's not terrible. So that's, for me, that it stays fresh for me because of that.
I would agree with that. If this was starring Jean-Claude Van Damme or Sylvester Stallone or Keanu Reeves,
Keanu
it would be
Reeves,
a pretty
like
good
Speed.
movie.
Like Speed. It's got that kind of feel to it. And
Point Break.
It's fun.
I mean, it's not a horrible idea of a movie. It's just, it's not remotely Mission Impossible.
Right.
Like,
and then that's what actually just
whatever it is, it's not that.
About the whole series is that 3, it was like such a big correction, a good correction, and I'm just amazed that the series got this far and that
they survived.
They saved it. It's MI2 is fun though and memorable.
I think it has. There are some cinematography moments that I just always like. Before rewatching the movies to prepare for this episode, I hadn't watched part 2 and I don't even know how, like, years. I don't know how many years, but I never forget the shot when, and it's corny, but the shot when Ethan is walking by with the doves flying, but you get like a zoom in on his eyes and you can see the fire from that scene reflected in his eyeball. And I just like, it's just a really beautiful camera shot. So there are moments like that I think are kind of visually stunning. So I think that maybe helped this one. Maybe our memories filled in some gaps where we kind of made it a little bit better.
It's fun to look at. Really awesome for a 10 or 11-year-old boy. But so how do we think about it as popcorn theologians in the, David, this was your mission.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So with this one, I mean, I would just very briefly back on the popcorn side. I think the reason I would put this as stale is not because of all of that. Like we mentioned, there was kind of a good movie in here, except that it was just so disconnected. Almost every decision made in this movie was just weird. The decisions that the characters make, the choice of slow motion, the randomly interspersing, like there's waves crashing. I'm like, what's happening? Like, why are we showing this? The original cut of this was 3.5 hours long. The studio made him cut it to 2 hours. I can't imagine what the other 1.5 hours would be. Maybe it makes more sense. I don't know.
It was just more of the same. It was just slow motion.
It was just slower. The whole thing was supposed to be in slow motion, I think is what it was. My big thing is I do think that, like I said, the decisions didn't always make sense. For example, the movie starts with the bad guy crashing a plane full of people to steal a bag. That's all he has to do. He has to take a bag. You could do this at a crosswalk. This is purse snatching.
You could do it
That's
at
all that this
claim.
is. You could do this 1,000 easier ways. Instead, you killed a plane full of people. I think they just wanted to make sure, this is a bad guy, right? But yeah, ultimately, I do wonder if did anyone tell John Woo it's a spy movie, not just an action film? Because it does feel a lot of times like they're not particularly good spies. But the other big thing, I would say the big problem, like we already mentioned, Hunt's character changes quite a bit. In Mission Impossible 1 and in the future installments, he's very smart. He is obviously physically capable, but his main weapon is his mind. But in this one, he is not particularly smart. About an hour in, he lays out the plot to Luther. And we're like, yeah, we know. You didn't already know that, huh? And the response, Luther says, "That's simple, huh?" And then Ethan says, "Why not?" I'm like, are these editorial notes or is this supposed to be that simple, huh? Why not? I think that sums up a lot of the writing choices for me. But anyway, I am restraining myself because there's a lot of beautiful stuff in this movie. And there's a fair bit theologically to talk about. But I also really want to quickly throw a bone to you guys because I think what happened is I got some really stale popcorn in my admittedly diluted soda. And then it kind of got mushy and it made me like not able to see any of these talking points. And you guys really helped me out on that. So I greatly appreciate. There's a whole point that you could get into about, they created a monster in order to find a cure. That could have been an interesting theme. Maybe it's in the other 1.5 hours that they really explore that. I don't know. Instead, it seemed like it was mostly just plot points. But one thing that we see in this movie, I think, follows very well from Mission Impossible 1, which is that Ethan values human life. Ethan is contrasted with Ambrose in the fact that unlike a guy who crashes a plane full of people to steal a bag. Ethan is unwilling to even compromise the lives of the security guards, these innocent bystanders. Ambrose likes to leave bodies lying around, and Ethan is unwilling to harm them, or in particular Naya. I mean, he doesn't even want to put her back in harm's way, even when the ends could theoretically justify the means. He only does it because he's forced to. And this, I think, actually ties really well with his experience directly before this, which is with Phelps. Phelps wiped out the whole team. He had no problem wiping Ethan out, even his wife. He did not value their lives whatsoever.
And Emilio Estevez, but yeah.
Right. Who I forgot was in this as well.
He's great in that.
Yeah. And so, but in this case, Ethan fights Ambrose, but he doesn't even kill him until it's self-defense. He does the superhero thing, right? Which is either the bad guy dies of their own actions, or the good guy kills him only in self-defense. And so this kind of sets the stage, sets the precedent for that. But I thought as well that, really what we're seeing is a character of virtue. And I thought I found a really interesting verse that applied pretty well here. Proverbs 6:16-19. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil. We got the haste, but not running to evil. False witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. And I'm like, that's a perfect description of Ambrose, of Phelps, of any Bond villain, really. But I mean, in this case, we see it contrasted pretty well, which is things that set him apart from Ethan. So, any thoughts on the virtue aspects there? Bridget, do you want to try and change our mind about the rating of this?
I'm going to stand by my rating. Listen, this is what I understand why you would have the opinion that it is stale. I think if I can go back really quickly to something you said about the writing in this one too, and Ethan laying out the plot and then just saying it's that simple and why not. What struck me as you were explaining that, David, is that one of the things I've always liked about Mission Impossible 1 is that it's a movie, it's an action movie, but you kind of have to think while you're watching that movie too. If you go into that movie just to watch an action movie, it's hard. It's not, you kind of have to keep up with it. You have to keep your brain turned on just to understand what's going on with the plot. Yeah. I wonder, and I wasn't cinematically aware enough of this at the time that these movies were coming out. I wonder if that's something that audiences didn't love about the first one. And if the second one was an attempt to give them a simpler plot, like, okay, so here is Ethan Hunt just in an action movie. And then obviously that isn't the direction that the series ultimately ended up going. But anyway, I wonder if that is
some ornithologist was in the screening and the producer got the notes. We need more birds.
More birds.
No, but I think your point.
That's a good
point. It sounds
yeah.
like what a producer would ask. This is Ethan
complicated
Hunt for the new millennia, right?
Yeah,
and it's good, and people have never seen anything like this. And if you're making movies for 11-year-old Miles, you nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Agreed. It was a beautiful music video. Yeah.
I figure there was probably some push and pull between what are we going to make him? Is this going to be cerebral like the old show? Is it going to be Star Trek or Star Wars? Right. I mean, that's
right.
Sort of quintessentially going to be cerebral, or is it going to be more just fantasy action? And I think one, Brian De Palma was going for the former, and 2, they tried the latter, and then J.J. Abrams decided to bring it a little, at least split the difference, but bring back a little bit of the cerebral in 3. So
yeah, and really nailed it. I think. I'm excited to talk 3 for sure. But one last thing I wanted to point out here is we actually get some Christ imagery. And it's not great. It's not consistent necessarily, but we see that, Naya takes the disease upon herself to protect others. She's willing to end her life in order to keep others safe. Ethan, delivers the antidote to her and buys her freedom, right? So she's enslaved to her former lover, but also he buys her freedom, not just from him, but from the law, because remember, he's offering her, I don't know, I guess immunity would be a pardon.
A ransom,
right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so there's a way for that to be carried out. So in a sense, he's redeeming her from her former lover and from the law, kind of the same way that Christ delivered us from sin and from the wrath of God. And so, I thought that was, again, as with most things in this movie, not executed particularly well, but it was something that, it is, you can always find something resembling a Christ figure, even if you have to dig in this particular movie for it. So it does make me picture that, what if the, crushing the head of the serpent looked instead like a motorcycle joust. Anyway.
But then 6 years later, he leaves Naya behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, it would have been better for the series. I don't know what happened to make them not. I mean, they could have had them together in 3 if they'd wanted, and it might have worked.
I read somewhere that she just didn't want to come back, focused on her family or something like that.
Yeah.
I think this makes more sense. I didn't care for her character.
True. So, and 6 years have passed. So, I mean, that's actually a lot of time for characters and relationships to have changed. We hope you enjoyed this snack-sized taste of Popcorn Theology. Check out the full episode using the link in the description. Subscribe on YouTube for more content. Follow and interact on social media to share with others. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.